Your dog is probably asleep on something it's not supposed to be on right now, completely useless, maybe snoring. And somehow that animal is the end result of 30,000 years of evolution working on the most dangerous predator in Ice Age Europe. Wolves were faster than you, stronger than you, and could smell you from miles away in the dark. No human sat down and decided to fix that by inventing a companion animal. No tribe held a meeting. No one had a plan. What happened instead was stranger. Wolves may have started domesticating themselves before any human even noticed it was happening. This is the chain of accidents that turned an apex predator into something that wears a birthday hat. To understand how this happened, you have to actually feel what that world was like. Forget cities, forget agriculture, forget everything built in the last 10,000 years. Go back 30,000 years, and you're looking at small groups of maybe 20 to 50 people moving constantly across frozen landscapes, eating whatever they could find, losing people to cold and injury and starvation on a regular basis. Most hunts failed. A bad winter didn't just mean discomfort, it meant people died. These weren't communities with spare resources. Every calorie mattered. And yet, humans are catastrophically messy eaters. Even when food was scarce, a hunter-gatherer camp left behind a trail of bones, scraps, hides, and half-eaten carcasses. Not because they were wasteful, they ate everything they could, but because some parts of an animal just aren't worth the effort when you're exhausted and the temperature is dropping. To the humans, that was garbage. To a wolf, it was a free meal sitting right there at the edge of the firelight, requiring zero hunting, zero risk of being gored by prey, zero energy spent on a chase that might fail anyway. So wolves started showing up at the edges of camps. Now here's where it gets interesting, because not all wolves responded the same way. Picture three types sitting out there in the dark. The aggressive ones moved in too fast, acted threatening, and got a spear thrown at them. The fearful ones hung back so far they couldn't reach the scraps before other predators did. But a third group, calmer, more curious, less reactive, crept in close enough to eat without triggering a response from the humans. They got the food. They survived the night. They moved on to the next camp and did it again. This wasn't a human decision at all. Nobody looked at a wolf and thought, I'll keep that one. It was the wolves themselves sorting into categories based on their own personalities, and natural selection doing what it always does, quietly rewarding the ones whose traits helped them survive. Calmer wolves ate more. They stayed healthier through winter. They passed that calm temperament on to their offspring, who showed up at the next generation of human camps and did the same thing. Over hundreds of generations, wolf populations living near humans were slowly, invisibly filtering themselves. The aggressive ones kept dying. The fearful ones kept starving. The calm ones kept eating. Nobody planned it. Evolution doesn't need a plan. For a long time, this was just a theory. A plausible story about ancient wolves and ancient humans, but impossible to watch happen in real time because domestication takes thousands of years. Then in 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev set up an experiment in Siberia that changed what we thought we knew. Belyaev wasn't working with wolves. He used silver foxes, which are wild animals with no history of domestication. His question was simple. If you select purely for temperament, what happens? So every generation, he tested the foxes and pulled out only the least aggressive individuals for breeding. No training, no conditioning, no tricks or rewards. Just one rule. The calmest foxes breed, the others don't. Within a few decades, the foxes were behaving like dogs. They wagged their tails when humans approached. They whined for attention. They sought out physical contact instead of avoiding it. The personality shift happened faster than almost anyone expected because the trait was already sitting in the genetic pool. Belyaev was just applying consistent pressure in one direction. But then the bodies started changing too, and this part nobody fully predicted. The foxes developed floppy ears. Their snouts got shorter. White patches appeared in their fur. Their tails curled upward. Nobody selected for any of those traits. They came along for the ride automatically. What Belyaev had stumbled onto is something scientists now call domestication syndrome. When you breed animals for reduced aggression, a cluster of physical changes tends to follow. The leading explanation involves neural crest cells, a type of cell in the embryo that contributes to both stress responses and physical development of the face and ears. Dial down the adrenaline system, and you inadvertently change how those cells migrate and develop. Calmer animal, softer face. It's not a coincidence. It's biology. Now put that back in the Ice Age. The wolves near human camps weren't being deliberately bred for anything, but natural selection was applying the same pressure Belyaev applied in his lab. Calm wolves survived. Anxious ones didn't. Over enough generations, those wolves probably started looking different, slightly smaller, slightly softer around the face, ears that sat a little lower. A human standing at a campfire 25,000 years ago might have noticed a wolf nearby that looked just slightly less like a wolf than it used to. Not a pet, not even close to a pet. But something had shifted, and neither species fully understood what was already in motion. So the relationship started as a wolf exploitation strategy. Eat the human's garbage, avoid the spear, repeat. But at some point it flipped into something mutual, and that's when everything accelerated. A wolf's nose is somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000 times more sensitive than a human's. Their hearing picks up frequencies and distances that are completely invisible to us. A calm wolf sitting near camp wasn't just a scavenger anymore. It was a detection system that no human technology could replicate. Bears approaching through the tree line, a rival group moving in from the north, a herd of deer 3 valleys over. The wolf knew before any human did, and the humans who paid attention to that signal survived situations the others didn't. Once both species started getting something real out of the arrangement, the bond didn't just continue, it deepened at a biological level. Dogs predate every other domesticated animal. They were alongside humans before sheep, before goats, before cattle, before farming existed at all, before writing, before cities, before metal tools, before the pyramids were a thought in anyone's head. The dog is the oldest partnership humans have ever formed with another species, and it started over scraps that weren't worth keeping. When agriculture finally arrived and humans shifted from chasing animals to growing grain, you might expect dogs to become less useful and drift away. Instead, they rewired their digestive systems to stay close to us. Wolves struggle to process starch. Dogs evolved extra copies of the gene that produces amylase, the enzyme that breaks starch down, specifically because living near farming humans meant the food supply changed. They didn't choose this consciously. Their biology just kept adapting to match wherever we were going, the same way it had been doing for tens of thousands of years. The emotional rewiring went just as deep. When a human stares into a dog's eyes, both species release oxytocin, the hormone that drives bonding between parents and their newborns. That response is not universal across animals. Wolves raised by humans don't trigger it the same way. Dogs do. Somewhere in that long stretch of shared survival, dogs develop the ability to tap directly into the part of the human brain that says, protect this, care for this, this matters. It's not manipulation exactly, it's co-evolution. They change to fit us the same way we change to rely on them. Even the famous puppy dog eyes are part of this. Dogs have a small muscle above their inner brow. Wolves largely don't have it, that pulls the eyebrow upward and inward, producing that wide, soft, almost sad expression that humans find irresistible. It almost certainly spread through the population because dogs that could make that face got more food, more care, and better odds of surviving long enough to have offspring. We selected for it without knowing we were selecting for anything. We just kept feeding the ones that looked at us a certain way. The cost of all this closeness showed up later, once humans started breeding dogs deliberately for appearance instead of function. The wolf that once ran down prey across frozen terrain became a pug that struggles to pull air through a compressed airway, a dachshund whose spine curves under the weight of a body built for aesthetics rather than movement, a bulldog that often can't give birth without surgical help. The domestication that started as a survival advantage for both species turned, in certain directions, into something that works against the animal entirely. But underneath all of it, the wolf is still there. When your dog circles 3 times before lying down, that's an ancient behavior. Wolves flattening grass to make a sleeping spot. When they twitch and whine in their sleep, those are motor patterns from an animal that once needed to be ready to run. When they bury food in the backyard they'll never go back to find, that's an Ice Age storage instinct running in an animal that gets fed twice a day on a schedule. The 30,000 years of change didn't erase what was there before, it just built on top of it. All the biology and genetics point to a partnership that worked, but one discovery in Germany makes the argument that it became something beyond practical utility. Around 14,000 years ago, 2 people were buried together near what is now Bonn. A man and a woman placed carefully in the ground, and beside them, a dog. Not thrown in, not discarded, placed there deliberately, the same way the humans were. The dog's bones told a specific story. As a puppy, it had suffered a serious illness, the kind that would have killed it without sustained care. It survived for weeks or months past the point where it should have died, which means someone fed it, watched over it, and kept it alive through a period when it couldn't contribute anything at all. These were people living in one of the harshest environments humans have ever occupied. Every scrap of food had a cost. Spending resources on a sick animal that couldn't hunt, couldn't guard, couldn't do anything useful was not a rational survival calculation. They did it anyway. And when that person died, or those people died, whoever buried them decided the dog belonged with them. That's not a transaction anymore. That's grief. That's the recognition that this animal was part of something, and leaving it out of the burial would have been wrong. All of it traces back to a few wolves that were slightly less afraid of firelight than the others. No plan, no invention, just scraps beside a fire, and evolution slowly closing the distance between two species until one of them started burying the other. The most successful partnership in human history started because wolves were willing to eat our garbage. That's the whole story.